Good morning, everyone. We're going to go over the 7th edition servsafe Manager, Chapter 1. So I hope you enjoy and learn a lot. Remember that servsafe is incredibly important. This is one of the most important units we do all semester, and that's because we need to make sure that we literally don't kill people with food. So we're going to talk about providing safe food, Chapter 1. What do you think? When is a foodborne illness considered an outbreak? A, 2 or more people have same symptoms after eating same food. B, regulatory authorities have investigated. Remember, your regulatory authorities are like your CDC, your Centers for Disease Control, your Department of Health, things like that. And the outbreak is confirmed by laboratory analysis. Think about this one, and we're going to come back to it. Some challenges to food safety include time, language and culture, literacy and education, pathogens, unapproved suppliers, high-risk customers, and staff turnover. These are all challenges to food safety because think about how many time constraints we have. Think about how many different languages and cultures we have. Think about how many people have low literacy levels, or maybe they're not educated and they don't understand what we're teaching them. Pathogens are your bacteria, your viruses. So all of these things pose a problem to food safety, and it's our responsibility as food handlers and managers to make sure that these problems are taken care of, or that rather we help them not exist, which is almost virtually impossible. However, there are lots of things that we can control in the kitchen. So if a foodborne illness happens in your restaurant, the cost of this illness could be lost work, medical costs, long-term disability, and death. So your employees will lose work when you have to shut down. They might need to find employment elsewhere. If people get sick, you, the restaurant owner, are responsible for their medical costs. It could provide people with long-term disabilities depending on the severity of their illness. And then if they're a high-risk population, people do die of foodborne illnesses. And all of these things cause a problem for the establishment. So how does foodborne illness occur? Well, first we need to understand what a foodborne illness is. And foodborne illness is the presence of harmful substances that is found in food. It's usually a result of some form of contamination. Our contamination comes from 3 different ways. They can be biological, chemical, or physical. There are the only 3 types of contaminations that occur. They also occur from unsafe practices, usually caused by human. A lot of you will come to realize later in this PowerPoint and in Chapter 2 that 90% of foodborne illnesses can be avoided, literally, if we just wash our hands. Most of the time, if you get a foodborne illness, it is transmitted from person to person. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, so just keep that in the back of your mind. So food can become unsafe by these ways. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, purchasing food from an unapproved source. So that would be like buying some produce from the farmer's market instead of a grocery store. We don't know who that farmer is, where he came from, what type of produce he has, that sort of stuff. We cannot use that in the establishment. Time, temperature abuse, so not keeping your foods at the right temperature, not cooking them to the right temperature. Cross-contamination, which would be something as in the photo, using the same cutting board to prepare raw protein in a ready-to-eat food. Poor personal hygiene, so not washing our hands, scratching our arms, and then I'm pretty sure he's going to stir that food. Delicious, right? And then poor cleaning and sanitizing, where we're not cleaning our surfaces properly to remove any bacteria. You guys need to remember that there's a massive difference between cleaning and sanitizing. Cleaning means to remove the surface dirt. Sanitizing means to kill bacteria, and we have to make sure that we're doing both. We need to remove surface dirt and kill bacteria. So, what do you think? Is it okay for a food service operation to use prepared food in a private home? Yes or no? If you said no, you are correct. There is an exception to this rule, and it would be if the home is sanctioned for food service. They are evaluated by the health inspector, and they do have a commercial kitchen inside their home. However, your everyday baker or the stay-at-home mom that likes to cook cupcakes and she wants to sell them in your establishment, that's a no-no. And here's a good explanation why. Okay, so poor cleaning and sanitizing. This is one way that our food becomes unsafe. This can happen because our equipment and utensils are not washed, rinsed, and sanitized between uses. We're going to talk more later when we do chapters 8 and 9 about proper use of our 3 and 4 compartment sinks. Then it's imperative that all of our dishes are washed, rinsed, sanitized, and air dry. So food contact surfaces are wiped clean instead of being washed, rinsed, and sanitized. Our wiping containers are not stored in solution between uses. And sanitizer solutions are not at required levels. So the rags that she's using, they can be used to clean tables, that's fine. But as soon as she's done, they need to go back in our red bucket. Sanitizer solutions, we will make our red buckets, and then you use a test strip in order to check to make sure that the part per million concentration is correct. If the solution is not effective, then it doesn't kill bacteria. So, what do we think the problem is here? A, time temperature abuse. B, cross-contamination. C, poor personal hygiene. Or D, poor cleaning and sanitizing. If you said C, poor personal hygiene, you are correct. Looks like this gentleman is either coughing or sneezing into his hand on top of the food that he's about to serve you. Delicious, right? What about this one? Time temperature abuse, cross-contamination, poor personal hygiene, or poor cleaning and sanitizing? If you said B, you are correct. Cross-contamination. It appears as though some sort of liquid, probably juice from beef, has spilled onto this lettuce, which is considered a ready-to-eat food. Okay, chicken breast cooked to looks like 115. What's the problem with this one? A, time temperature abuse. B, cross-contamination. C, poor personal hygiene. Or D, poor cleaning and sanitizing. If you said A, you are correct. Remember that chicken must be cooked to an internal temperature of 165 degrees for 15 seconds. What about this problem? Wiping a prep table between uses with a single towel. Time temperature abuse, cross-contamination, poor personal hygiene, or poor cleaning and sanitizing. If you said poor cleaning and sanitizing, option D, you're correct. The question gets you here because it says wiping a prep table. Single-use towel is fine because we can throw that paper towel out, and it looks like it's some kind of wet tomato. That's probably what he's trying to clean up. So he could wipe it with the single-use towel, and then what does he have to do afterwards? He still has to sanitize the surface. So right now he's only cleaning it. He's not sanitizing. He's forgetting a crucial step. So, who's higher at risk for a foodborne illness? The following people are at risk for higher foodborne illness. So this means that they are more likely to get sick than anyone else. Elderly people, preschool-age children, people with compromised immune systems, and pregnant women are no longer classified by the FDA as a high-risk population. However, a lot of people would prove that that is debatable because pregnant women do have a lot of restrictions on what they can and cannot eat. However, it is highly unlikely that they would get as sick as maybe an elderly person or a child based on food. Excuse me. People with compromised immune systems, that means cancer patients, people with HIV, even if you have a cold, you are considered a compromised immune system person. And so if our immune system is fighting to work to fight off one bacteria, and then let's say you get E. coli, your body has to choose which one it's going to fight off. And so you already have a compromised immune system if you're sick, so you just need to be more careful. So to keep food safe, we got to focus on these items. Controlling time and temperature, preventing cross-contamination, practicing good personal hygiene, purchasing from approved, reputable suppliers, cleaning and sanitizing. All of these things are things that we can control in the kitchen. By doing these 5 things, it prevents people from getting sick. These 5 things are the base of all sanitation and safety products, and it is imperative that we do these things. So we need to make sure for training and monitoring that we train staff and follow safety procedures, which is what we're doing now. We're providing an initial training, and then it's going to last all semester long, and then even in culinary too. If you remember, you had sanitation and safety training also in intro, just not as in-depth. We want to provide staff with general food knowledge, provide job-specific food safety training, and retrain you regularly. And all of these steps have to be done with the other 5 things before this in order to make everything work effectively. So we want to document our training, so every time you get trained on food safety, you're going to sign off on it. I have to make sure that I monitor you and that you're following right procedures. When you guys get into your lab groups, your executive chef, that will be their responsibility. And if you complete a task incorrectly, we're going to retrain you immediately so that we can keep food safe. Remember that if you prepare food unsafely, you can potentially kill people. And last time I checked, we're not in the business of killing people. So, some agencies that prevent foodborne illnesses, excuse me again, are the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration. They're a government agency, and they inspect and regulate all food except meat, poultry, and eggs. They regulate the food that's transmitted from state lines, so from Georgia to Alabama and Alabama to Louisiana. And they deal with issues of the food code. The FDA Food Code provides recommendations for food safety regulations. They're created for city, state, and tribal residencies, and they're recommendations, not laws. So the FDA says, hey, you should do this because we think it's a good idea, but you're not going to get in trouble if you don't do it. However, there could be some sort of risk. So it's really good just to follow what the FDA and the FDA Food Code says because, again, we want to keep things safe. Couple other agencies. The first one would be the USDA, which is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They're the ones that regulate and inspect meat, poultry, and eggs. They regulate food across state lines, and they regulate food involving more than one state. So think about the brand like Purdue Chicken. They produce most of their chicken here in Georgia. Well, Purdue Chicken is sold all over the United States. So the USDA has to regulate the Purdue chicken that comes from Georgia that makes its way all the way to California or all the way to Maine. And then we have the Center for the Disease Control, which is CDC, and the Public Health Service, which is PHS. The CDC is actually here in Atlanta, which we're very fortunate to have that. And public health services are actually in most every single county. We particularly have the Cobb, Paulding, Douglas Public Health Service. So our public health service goes over 3 counties. And these people assist the FDA, USDA, and state and local health departments. They conduct research into causes of foodborne illness outbreak, and they assist investigating outbreaks. So if you go to a restaurant and you get sick, and you go to the hospital and you notify the restaurant that you have been sick, the CDC and the Public Health Service will step in, and they will perform an investigation to determine what strain of bacteria you had, why it happened, how it happened, etc. These are all very, very, very important agencies. So we're going to talk about your local and regulatory authorities, and they're the ones that write or adopt code for food service operations. And then that includes your local regulatory authority, includes your health inspector. And then codes may differ from the FDA food code, so it's imperative that people understand the differences and follow both because your local regulatory enforces laws. That is your health inspection that you see when you go into a restaurant. Remember, we don't eat at places that have less than a 90. You need to be reading those health inspections, determining why they got points off, and making sure that they're doing everything correctly. You can also look for individual servsafe certificates to make sure that they're keeping food safe. So food safety responsibilities include inspecting operations, enforcing regulations, investigating complaints and illnesses, and issuing licenses and permits. We're going to talk more about licenses and permits later on, but there are variances that we need to discuss in regards to seafood. So that's where the local regulatory authority comes in. All right, that is the end of this PowerPoint for Chapter 1. I hope you learned a lot and completed your guided reading notes.